may the meditations of my heart come from you, Lord Jesus. Amen. Would you like to be seated? Well, I'm sometimes perplexed that in our modern society, Jesus is portrayed as this soft, meek and mild man. Because you read today's gospel and there was nothing meek or mild about what he had to say. In fact, what he had to say was incredibly confrontational. And if you're here and you're a fundamentalist, then you're in a whole lot of trouble, because you should be armless, legless, blind, and be unable to hear. Because, I don't know about you, but I've got plenty of sin. And according to this, I should be cutting everything off that causes me to sin. It'll be very painful. But of course, he's not, is he? He's not talking about a literal cut your leg off. He's saying, in comparison to, he's saying, really, God is calling us to a righteousness that we cannot earn in our own strength. It is earned through the blood of Jesus Christ. And so therefore, we cannot, in our own strength, avoid, in Jesus' example here, hell, separation from God. But it is won for us, heaven is won for us by the cross and by Jesus' deeds. So please don't hear this message and go out and start cutting limbs off, because that was not Jesus' intention. His intention was that we would understand how dramatically impossible it is for us to earn God's favour without Jesus. How impossible it is for us to avoid hell without him. But you know what? What I really want to focus on today is this idea of saltiness. And I'm not the best person to talk about that, but I know someone who is. So I'm going to invite Andrew to come up. Andrew, would you come up? Now, I'm sure most of you know Andrew. He's a shy, retiring fellow. Andrew, for those who don't know you, tell us just quickly a bit about yourself.
My name's Andrew. I'm 52. I like long walks on the beach. I like food.
It's not fun, but it's life. We want to.
I teach food. I live for food. I've been in the church here for nearly 20 years. So I've seen a lot of people grow a lot older, including me. And I love being here.
We love having you. Now, being someone who loves food, and your past, before you were teaching, you were a chef, is that right? A chef. So you know a fair bit about salt. Right, well, I'm going to hand over to you. Would you be happy to tell us a bit about what Jesus was on about here?
Sure.
Thank
you. I'll talk over here if you don't mind. Hopefully I won't need my glasses. Morning all. Salt is good. Stu did it with us earlier on when he gave us some salt and vinegar chips. We heard in the gospel salt is good as well. Fran tells me I eat too much of it. Perhaps I do. She also says as a nurse that too much salt is not healthy for me, hardening the arteries or something. But salt is a tool of my trade. I teach and cook kids. I don't cook kids, I cook and teach for kids. I teach them to cook. Salt, as I tell my kids, adds flavour to a meal. It enhances the final product of what we are creating. Stops something from being bland. Salt's a natural product. It's found in the earth, it's found in fruit and vegetables, it's found in the ocean. But I think, when I think of salt in the context we've heard this morning, I think of it in the context of Christian salt. I think of it as the flavour that we, as Christians, impart to others, but also as the flavour that we receive from others in our daily lives. So I'd like to tell a bit about my salting, my flavouring as a Christian. Started before I can remember. How's that? Well, I've never not known going to church. My mum and dad, some of you know them, took us to church when we were, oh, I was never that big. I grew up crawling underneath the pews and through the pews. They were lovely wooden ones with needles you could actually get right under. You could crawl all the way to the back and to the front and turn across. And we had priests that were always happy to let us do that. That was cool. Through then I went from there, the crawling to Sunday school. Loved Sunday school. It's the coolest place. Got you out of this part, which is that over there, and for an 8-year-old, that's really cool. I went every Sunday. Everyone went every Sunday. It was a given. That's what we did. But Sunday school was really cool because I got to hear all the stories of the Bible. I don't know, some of you know, some of you might know, my favourite story then still is Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus was this little fat guy. At least that's the pictures I've seen in the book they have. This little fat guy. He got salted in a really big way. His life was before that really, really bland. He's just plodding along, gaining money, getting wealth, doing things that people didn't like. But he wanted it to have some flavour. He thought there had to be something better. So he went looking for the ultimate salt. And he found it when Jesus came over and had dinner with him. I love that idea. He went looking for salt, went looking for flavour in his life, and Jesus came and salted him. And that changed his life forever. When I started to get to the growing up stage of my life in church, the next step I took was to be an altar server. I don't know what it's like now because we don't have them anymore, but it used to be cutthroat in my day. We had probably 10 boys, all around the same age, somewhere between 9 and 12, 13. And we fought tooth and nail for the prime shifts. Not the early service, the family service is what we wanted, and the prime ones. Good Friday, Easter Sunday, Christmas. If you didn't get those, you weren't at the top of the tree. I had this really cool cassock. It was bright red, full length, white circles. I looked angelic. As a 12-year-old boy who was gangly, angelic is not a good look. But I managed to look it, I think, at least I thought I did. And it was warm. So in Auckland in winter, it was beautiful and warm. Tad hot in the summer, but with shorts and a t-shirt underneath, it didn't matter. But it was really interesting at that stage that I was able to watch people in church rather than I was sitting at the front and we sat there and looked out so I could watch people having a relationship with God. And I liked that idea about seeing that. During those times, I was really blessed to have 2 salt shakers in my life. My mum and dad. That's what parents do. They add salt to your life. They were a constant source of Christian flavour as I grew up. And even as an adult, they would still occasionally throw a sprinkle my way. Especially if they felt that I wasn't on track once I left home and went over to work outside Auckland. Their example to me about Christian flavour and about Christian salt is something that I value above all others, and still do. It's something that gave me direction in the decisions I made then. It's something that gave me direction in the decisions I make now. When I left school and headed off to the white blue yonder of hotels and resorts, I found myself at the opposite end of the country. For a guy that's grown up in the biggest town or city in New Zealand, Auckland, I went to a town that was in the middle of nowhere. If anyone's gone to Milford Sound in New Zealand, you have to travel through Te Anau, and it's like a 2-minute visit. So I've gone from this biggest city to this small town. There was no opportunity to find a church family there because I was working 6 days a week. My roster was 94 hours, I think, over 6 days. One of those days was Sunday. It was a given 7-day-week operation. I struggled in the world. It was very removed from the simple life I'd had at home and at school. That was easy. They were the good times. They were easy times. This was difficult. Fortunately, my dad wrote me a letter, probably nearly every week for 4 years, to tell me what was happening, to tell me what was happening on the other side. He continued through that letter to sprinkle salt on my life, Christian salt, to make sure that I was encouraged never to give up on what I was and who I was. And that was important. I think probably for the first half of my life, I was more the receiver of salt than the imparter of it. As a young person, it's very easy just to receive. You see the Y generation, it's all about me, me, me. It's all about taking and giving. And I relate to that. But it changed when I fell in love and got married and had 2 beautiful daughters. Some of you know that. How does grandeur working out to that? All of a sudden, there were other people in my life that I was responsible for, but also that I had the opportunity to salt for the first time, really. And I'd like to think that so far I've succeeded in that. The salt's not always absorbed into their systems. You just try a bit more, and it does occasionally. But I think God really started to work in my life from then, more than any other time before in my life, when He gave me the responsibility of imparting salt rather than receiving. When we moved here to Queensland, Mum and Dad were already set up here at Holy Trinity, and we found a wonderfully salted place to worship. In those days, the first service had the Sunday school, and there was 120 people sitting in the pews. Second service had 20 people, and that was on a good day. How things have changed. But I think the great thing about it was that there was a saltiness that was about it. And I love that. I still love that about this place. Brett's mum, Carolyn, was here at that stage when I first started. She seemed to think that I had condiment value for the youth group. So I found after about 15 years of sprinkling salt, I knew what I was doing. I loved the idea of something that she sprinkled into my life through the salt that she put into me. I loved the idea of being able to speak into the lives of these kids over the years, all those years. Some of them are still keeping in contact 10, 15 years later, and that's a cool thing. We got up to all sorts of fun. Things that are reported back. I remember going to AYM training days, and Carolyn and I having to own up to things we'd done at youth group with all these other people. You did that. And I think we were the only people that did it, but it gave people a sense of understanding that you can actually do stuff with kids that is a little bit out there if it gets the message across about who God is in their life. I think that's important. If this is the same sort of thing, I think you probably found that, Hannah, did you? A little bit out there? A little bit fun? That's what learning about God should be. It's really cool. We also started our first youth services here, the opportunity of seeing what kids could do given the opportunity. It was a great thing to watch them grow up, knowing God in their own way. And it is much more different from the way we know God, because they see things from a different angle. The nicest part about it, though, is seeing the unchurched kids feel comfortable here, feel accepted, feel loved. God had created a safe place for them here in this place. And that's really cool. It was also during my youth group times I had my midlife crisis. And it's not the car. The car was after the midlife crisis. I better explain that. I always wanted to be a teacher when I was at school. That was what I was going to do. From about year 10 through to about halfway through year 12, I was going to be a teacher. Leave school, go to university, blah, 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 become a teacher. One teacher I talked to, who I actually respected, said, "You don't want to be a teacher." I said, no. Why not? You limit yourself to a certain level of intellect, he said. I don't know whether he was talking about the teachers or the students there, but now looking back, I think he's more talking about the teachers and the students. But I really still wanted to do it. But I went off into my career in hospitality for 2 years. But every 5 years or so since I left school, I revisited the idea, prayed about it, and each time I got the feeling that God wasn't quite ready for me, or perhaps I wasn't quite ready for Him to make me a teacher. When I finally got the nod from God, so 12 years ago now, I began a mind-blowing experience that continues to excite me every day. Every day. In school holidays, I'm in school. Go figure. But I like being there. It's really nice. It's a good place. I'm blessed to be able to teach at a Christian school now. I have colleagues who support each other with prayer and salt. I have around 400 kids I see every day, many of whom have bland lives. I teach them hospitality. I teach them English. In the kitchen, they learn about creating food. They learn about making something that they can share with their families that night. And they talk. We talk. All sorts of things are discussed over frying pans and saucepans. Excuse me. But the best stuff that we talk about is when they want to know about God while they're sauteing. So we talk, and we cook, and we taste. And wherever possible, they get salted. I think the distinctive mark of discipleship, typified by salt, is allegiance in Jesus. We all have opportunities to impart salt of Christian faith and love, as his disciples did right here in our community. So, that's my challenge to you, my chef's challenge to you, my Christian challenge to you. Let's get shaken.